is rhianaB, and we are back with the most epic season of Survivor to date. We're here for Winners at War. It's season 40, baby. 20 years since season 1. We're here at season 40, and it's gonna be a super crazy, explosive season. I cannot wait to delve into this season. Already, for the first 2 episodes, technically, there's a lot to talk about. I do want to say something first before we get started. How I'm going to do this series, I do want to do more than one video for Winners at War because there is a lot to cover. However, I'm not going to do an episode by episode review. I just don't have the time right now. So what I'm going to do is that this episode is going to recap the first 2 episodes, and then I'll go into predictions of who I think will do well, bad, or not entirely sure yet throughout the rest of the season. And then when the season is done, then I will do a final video basically talking about the whole season, who won, who lost, anything that happened in between. So there's going to be 2 videos for Winners at War. So this is video number 1. Hope you guys like it. And if you do, please hit that subscribe button so you can see my future Survivor videos. Also, go to my channel, check out my other Survivor series reviews. I've done a couple of them so far. And also, if you're subscribed, make sure you hit the bell icon so you can be notified about my future videos. Alright guys, let's delve into it. We got a lot to talk about. So first off, we are divided up into 2 tribes. First team is Dakal, and Dakal is going to be in red, hence why I'm also doing, I don't know if you can see on camera, I'm doing 2 different colors of eyeliner today. But Dakal will be in red. That is Tony, Wendell, Amber, Kim, Sophie, Nick, Sarah, Yul, Sandra, and Tyson. And then rocking blue, we have Sele, and I think I'm saying that correctly, Sele, and that is Rob, Natalie, Ethan, Parvati, Ben, Michelle, Danny, Denise, Jeremy, and Adam. So those are our 2 tribes, and honestly a pretty good group for how to divide these people up. Obviously you have some people who I think intentionally were not put together, like Rob and Amber, for obvious reasons. But then you do have a couple of pairings that are a little bit interesting. Like on Dakal, you have Tony and Sarah, who go way back into Survivor Cagayan, where Tony won, Sarah lost. Sandra and Tyson also have a small bond since they did play on Heroes vs. Villains together, and they were in the same alliance, also led by Rob. And then on Sele, we have Jeremy and Natalie, who played together on San Juan del Sur. And then you do have Rob and Parvati, who did play on Heroes vs. Villains together, but they were on opposing alliances. So we'll see how that goes there. Before we delve into tribes making it to their beaches, we do have some new things for this season. First off, we have a new Survivor currency, and they're called fire tokens. Each player starts off with 1 fire token, and if they ever get voted out of the game, they are supposed to bequeath their 1 fire token, or however many fire tokens they have, to one of the players still in the game. And then that player will then go to Edge of Extinction, where they will be until there's another challenge, or however many people, I'm not entirely sure. I'm getting used to the Edge of Extinction twist because I did not watch the original Edge of Extinction season, so I'm kind of learning this all through this season, which is probably a little bit of a downside for me personally, but hey, what you gonna do? Not only those 2 things, also the grand prize is $2 million, baby. This is the highest amount of money for a prize win in any reality TV show in history. That's pretty big, and that does go to show how popular Survivor still is. It's definitely not as like in thriving to a wide audience like it used to be back when it first premiered and in the earlier seasons, but it is still a huge show for it to put in $2 million for their grand prize. That is nuts. So we definitely know that all these winners, we knew that they were going to play hard just because they're all winners, and this is a very competitive season. But now they're also fighting for $2 million. So a lot at stake here. So we go ahead and go into our first challenge, which not only is reward in the form of flint and also rice, but it's also for immunity. We're right away going into our immunity challenge. It's the very Survivor Classic, the wrestling challenge in the water, where you have to take a buoy and drag it to your side of the water or the beach or whatever. I love this challenge. It gets very intense, very brutal, but it is a lot of fun to watch. And honestly, it really wasn't much of a competition. DeCall took the win. Soleil were able to keep up a little bit, but it was no question that DeCall was going to take this challenge. And on the chopping block, it's a bit of a lengthy list, and I feel like this is going to be the case for a lot of my chopping blocks in the future. But on the chopping block, we have Adam, we have Denise, we have Jeremy, we have Natalie, we have Rob, and we have Parvati. So let's get into why that is. Oh yeah, and I also have to mention that they also get an extra day to talk about strategy from the challenge to tribal council. So that way, this new tribe, they're gonna have more time to kind of rebond, get to know each other if they haven't met before, and also to hopefully have time to make a decision, because I feel like every tribal council is gonna be so intense just because everyone has a reason to go home. So anything can happen, and that already started happening after this challenge and after we found out who won and who lost. We do find out that the fire tokens are based, like we said earlier, they're a currency, and there is like a little kind of menu as to what you can use the tokens for. So you can get things like food, you can get tarp, you can get comfort items, and then also, I would assume, we're also going to get things for advantages and idle clues, all sorts of stuff like that. So, we'll see how that plays. It's a little too early to tell at this point, but that's how they're going to be used. And really quickly at Cele, we already see some pretty rookie mistakes coming from our winners. We have Denise and Adam who go into the woods area to, I guess, look for the water because they had a map with them. But since they were gone for so long, it turned out that people were starting to speculate that they were looking for an idol, which to them was not true, and by the footage that they showed, they really didn't talk about finding the idol. They talked about possibly having an alliance together, which that would actually be pretty interesting. It would be kind of like Denise doing the her original strategy of bonding with a younger guy and being able to work together really well, and they go to the end together. We'll see how that goes, since Adam is a little more flip-floppy than I think Malcolm ever was, but we'll see how that goes. And already there's huge targets on their back for them, obviously leaving the camp for so long, so that'll be a dynamic to talk about later. But we're gonna go to DeCall. One thing I actually found very interesting was that Yule started pointing out other players' relationships, and some were obvious. You know, you had Tyson and Sandra who played on the same season together. You had Sarah and Tony playing on the same season together, as well as Sarah, Tony, and Sandra all playing the same season together back during Game Changers. And then honestly, a bond I didn't see at all, because I don't follow this at all, but apparently Rob, Kim, Tyson, and Amber, they all had played poker about a year prior to this, and it was televised, and apparently now there's this new thing called the Poker Alliance. Again, definitely that's a couple to worry about, especially since it's already a 4-person, but I don't know how much that's going to play in the future. I definitely know Rob and Amber are going to be it like this, but Kim and Tyson or any of them mixing together, that I'm a little iffy on. I'm not entirely sure about that. And then we already have another possible alliance set up, and that is between Yule and Sophie. And this will be a start to another alliance I'll talk about later, but already right now we have Yule and Sophie because they've only played once, they're very intellectual players. And Sophie, I find it hilarious how she basically called Yule her nerd shield, because, and honestly, she's also resorting to her old strategy as well, because in South Pacific, she had used Albert, she had used Coach, she used them as the bigger targets. She was never one to really push too many buttons, although she was doing a lot of stuff behind the scenes. So we'll see if that'll work out for her. But Yule's a very intimidating strategist, and I think he can probably outplay Sophie if they do work together. So we'll see on that. We're gonna go back to Cele really quick. This will be interesting, and if this actually works out, this is going to be a dangerous alliance, and that is Rob and Parvati. Now, the thing is, like I said earlier, they had played on Heroes versus Villains. They were both on the Villains tribe, and they both were in opposite alliances. It was Parvati, Russell Hantz, and Danielle against Rob and Sandra, Tyson, Courtney, Jerry, basically everyone else on the villains tribe were against Danielle, Russell, and Parvati. So it's interesting to see them both play together. If they actually make this work, this will be a dangerous alliance. Honestly, I would say probably close to like what Rob and Amber did on when they played on All Stars. Could it be a power couple, and could they make it to the end? Personally, I say no, only because yes, it's good to have these people on the same alliance, but that puts a huge target on your alliance, and I don't know if they're going to be able to stick through it, because they're both want to win. And I also know that, you know, Survivor recently has always been about twists and swaps, and there's going to be a tribe swap at some point, so they may not even be able to strategize together for very long. We'll have to wait and see on that, but I don't think this is going to last very long, especially since these are two of the biggest players currently playing this season. I don't know if it'll be smart for them to actually do that. But this also kind of leads to the possible idea of an old school versus new school alliance. So on the old school, you have Rob, Parvati, Danny, and Ethan, who have all played in the very early iterations of the game or have not played in a while. And then on the new school, you do have Natalie, Jeremy, Ben, and Michelle, and Adam too, and I guess Denise to a certain extent, although she technically did play a while ago as well. But honestly, I did see this possibly happening on one of the tribes, if not both, to have a new school versus a new school and kind of figure out like which one is going to be the better. I'm not entirely sure. Especially since on the new school you do have Parvati and Rob. Danny's also a very good player, and Ethan, I feel like he's going to have to adapt a little bit more, but not to say that he obviously couldn't make it far in the game. He's a very likable guy. So with some alliances already starting to happen, we're already seeing a lot of panic and paranoia, which honestly, I don't blame these players for having at all. We have Jeremy and Natalie, who want to go after Denise and Adam because they were away for so long. They think that they were looking for an idol. And then Ben, who already spilled a lot of beans to Rob and almost threw Danny's name under the bus, although it worked out pretty well so far. Ben then goes and wants to work with Adam. He sees Adam as being a very strategic player and who can help him make strategy. And because of that, now Adam and Denise want to flip it and turn it on Natalie and Jeremy. And then, after all this, and after, like I said earlier, a bunch of names are being thrown around, now Parvati is starting to question, is this okay for me to feel this comfortable? Because at this point, no one has said anything really, at this tribal, about Rob or Parvati. And one of my favorite lines from Parvati in the first two episodes was Parvati saying, "Are we being punked?" Because, it is odd for, you cannot feel comfortable in Survivor. And in a season this competitive, there is no way you should feel at all comfortable. You should always have your ears open, always looking around, observing your surroundings. And I can understand why she's going to be paranoid, because, like, no one's saying anything, no one wants to talk to me, no one's really throwing my name around. Could it be me? And she's right to be concerned, because she, like I said a good number of times already, she is a very strong player. So we get to Tribal Council, and a pretty crazy tribal in and of itself. Ben and Michelle making points about, and Ethan too, saying like how their heads are spinning, there's so many ways to go, and how fast-paced this game is, especially to those like Ethan who haven't played for a long time. And then Jeremy goes and whispers to Ben about possibly wanting to get Parvati or Rob out. I don't know if that was really a good play, because I don't know how much they talked off camera possibly about them wanting to target Parvati or Rob, but if that was the first time he really brought it up, or like a couple of mentions later, it's not gonna really do that much this soon at a tribal council. So we get to the vote, and the only people that got votes were Adam, Denise, and Natalie, with Natalie going home, and Natalie being our first boot of Survivor winners at War. But obviously it's not the end of Natalie, because she still has Edge of Extinction. So before she goes there, she gives her only token to Jeremy, which is obvious, and then she goes to the Edge of Extinction, and there is the end of episode 1. So we're going to delve right into episode 2 of this big premiere. So we go back to DeCall. Sandra is very upset, and this actually got mentioned in the very first minutes of the show in the premiere, about Sandra being mad at Rob for not telling her that he or his wife Amber were competing on the season, since, you know, Island of the Idols, I believe, was filmed before, after, or during their time on Island of the Idols. I am not entirely sure on that. Someone may need to remind me in the comments, but basically there was an opportunity for Rob to say something, unless it's one of those cases where the producers maybe didn't want them to really talk about it in detail just because of confidentiality or that sort of thing. I don't know, but she's a little upset. And could this possibly be the start of a possible rivalry between Rob and Sandra? Because that would actually be pretty interesting to see, since they are very close outside of the show, on top of actually being on the show so many times and, you know, doing so well at this game. And now here's the other thing I want to talk about as far as the dynamics of alliances this season. So on Cele, we have old school versus new school, but here on Dekal, Yul is starting to orchestrate a one-time player alliance versus a multiplayer alliance. So in this case, his alliance is himself, Sophie, Wendell, and Nick. All four of them have only played one time. Everyone else has played at least 2 times. Honestly, not that bad of a strategy. You do have a lot of kind of like scrap and wit and really good strategic gameplay, and it's good. The thing is, that's 4 out of a 10-person tribe, so they would need to really play up the idea of working with other players. Maybe Sarah, maybe Sandra, since I know they probably don't want to work with Tony, since Tony and Sandra have their own rivalry, and kind of Sarah does too. Maybe play with those two to make it a 6-person alliance. That's a start, and definitely that'll give them a majority. I am a little scared because I'm really rooting for Yul this season. I love Yul. I want him to do well. I hope he's not going to be super obvious with the strategy. He's really good at playing down his overall strategic game, because that's what he did back in Cook Islands. I just hope he can pull it off again, because I want him to do so well. I'm rooting for my boy. So really quickly, we go back to Edge of Extinction, where Natalie is by herself and she is trying to stay in it. And then we learn some more about the currency and what is the benefit of being at Edge of Extinction. So there's a new item where you can use your coins, if you have any, and use them to either buy, again, food like, you know, peanut butter or wine or things like that. But also there were, I think, something involving an advantage, like an in-game advantage, and then having a hidden immunity idol, which is huge. And one thing I find interesting, a lot of those items, like the advantages, they're really cheap if you're looking at the currency. It was like 3 tokens for 1 clue or something like that. That seems pretty cheap. And honestly, because people can find idols without clues, I do wonder if using the tokens is really going to be worth anything as far as that is concerned. If they had something like an idol nullifier up for grabs, or maybe like, I don't know, like any other type of advantage they've used throughout the iteration of the show, then maybe it would be worth it. But I would assume that maybe there are some idols still hidden around on the islands. So we'll see if they can find them without idols. We do have a couple of good idol hunters this season, so I honestly don't know. But I did make a note of wondering why they were so cheap. So she actually does get a clue to find a hidden immunity idol on Edge of Extinction. So she goes out and she looks for it, climbs up a huge ass cliff mountain, which already has steps on it, so obviously that was meant for something. She finds the idol, but she cannot use it because it can't be used on Edge of Extinction, and she can't hold on to it. And she has to give that idol away to whoever loses. So whatever tribe will lose, she will pick someone from that losing tribe to get this hidden immunity idol. That is a really interesting concept, because now people on Edge of Extinction can still make an impact on the game. They're not completely out of it. And depending on who you choose to give it to, it can really shape the game up. And again, it's probably a little too early to tell, but I can only imagine like a big move happening because someone on Edge of Extinction was looking out for a fellow Alliance member, and that just playing the whole game up. It's just blowing my mind how many scenarios and reverse psychology there is to this season. It's just, I do not know where to turn to with this. There's so many outcomes, and anything can happen with this cast, and it's exciting, but oh god, is it messing with my brain. So we do go to our next immunity challenge, and it was a close race. Sele was dragging behind for a good way through, but thanks to Rob and his endurance, because good god, he is still strong after all these years, they were able to catch up to DeCall and pull out a win over them. And also I have to mention, this is the first time Denise, who, if you don't remember, on the Philippines where she won, she went to every single tribal council that season, and she ended up winning, which is a first. No one has done that since. And this is the first time her tribe has ever won immunity, so she didn't have to go to tribal council. So I was very proud of Denise for that, because she's also in like my top 3 people of who I want to see do really well. And another thing I really loved was Sandra being a complete, like, basketball mom. Like, the mom going, like, yeah, go, honey, go do it. You guys are doing great. Don't pay attention to them. Keep going. And I just thought it was so hilarious to see her doing the little mom thing. I just thought it was so funny. Also, there was a part where there was a section where they had to go over a barrel roll. And then, I think it was Rob, because he was, like, the last one to make it over, and he's like, pull me! I just thought, my mom and I, because we were both watching it was so funny. We were both laughing. Okay, and speaking of Sandra, going back to her, I did not expect this at all, but Natalie ended up giving the idol to Sandra. I'm sorry, what? I don't know what Natalie's strategy was in giving Sandra the idol, unless she really wants to work with her, but I'm sorry, you cannot give Sandra that much leeway in the game. You need to be very careful about playing with people like Parvati and Rob and Amber and Sandra, because these are big time players, and if you give them any inch for them to work with, they can make it to the merge, they can make it to the end, and they can win again. And I know for a fact no one wants Sandra to win for a 3rd time. So I don't know what Natalie's strategy is behind that. Hopefully we can get more insight on that later, but I was completely shocked when she gave the idol to Sandra. Obviously at DeCall, there's a lot of talk about this poker alliance and the multi-time playing people versus the one-time players. They are kind of butting heads at this point, but Yul and Nick go up to Tyson because they see that Tyson could possibly be a flip, and they decide to tell him, people are kind of targeting you because you're with this alliance with Amber and Kim, and Amber's already got a connection with Rob, and Rob's got a lot of connections as well, so that's probably not a smart move to make. In my opinion, I agree with Yul. It's not a good move on Tyson to do that. So Tyson may flip on his original alliance of Kim and Amber, and we'll see if that shakes things up. And because a lot of this is going around, similar to what happened the first tribal council, everyone's kind of talking and a lot of stuff's going down, a lot of names are being called. Oh yeah, I didn't even mention my chopping block. Chopping block for this tribal was Sandra, Nick, Amber, Tony, Tyson, and Kim. And going back to Kim on that, Kim is really starting to feel paranoid, and she is not used to feeling that sense of paranoia because when she played on One World, she was very much in control the entire game. She knew usually who was going home, she instigated a lot of the moves, so this is very new for her to be like on the outside and in the minority of the people on the tribe. So now she's starting to really try to go and get people to take her in and try to say, this is not the alliance I'm associated with. We are friends, yes, but that doesn't mean we're playing together, yada, yada, yada. So I guess the big question is, can Kim convince her fellow tribemates to keep her and say, this person's a bigger threat, that person is a bigger threat, that sort of a thing. So we get to tribal, and yes, Kim is really fighting to get her say in this tribe. And then again, the idea of connections comes back up again, and the poker alliance is starting to happen. And Amber is saying some pretty daunting statements. At one point, she's like, it's $2 million. We're all going to like fight for blood on this. And that's interesting since her husband is on the island as well. And it's just, it's nuts. Both of these tribals, I'm like, this is just a lot of stuff going on, and it's hard for me to even keep up with a lot of this. So we get to the vote. Sandra doesn't use her idol, and honestly, I didn't think she was gonna play it. It wasn't really that set about her going home, so she ended up using it correctly. By not using it at all. And the only votes were between Kim, Nick, and Amber is the one who got sent to Edge of Extinction, making her the second vote out of Winners at War. Personally, I think that was smart. You really did need to break up that path. I think what both of these votes represent is that connections mean everything in this game, and it can put a huge target on your back. We saw that with Natalie and her connection with Jeremy, and then you have now Amber and her connection not only with Kim and Tyson on her own tribe, but also to Rob, her own husband. So I think that was actually a pretty smart move. Now the question's going to be, when Rob finds out, is that going to put extra fire under his ass about him possibly getting revenge on the other tribe, especially if we're gonna have a tribe swap relatively soon? I don't know. I think in the preview for the third episode, he's like, I'm out for revenge, I'm out for blood, you're gonna regret turning against me. So we'll see how that goes. But I wonder if that's gonna be, if it's gonna blind him a little bit to what's going on, or hell, maybe it'll work in his favor. Again, we don't know. And then when Amber goes to Edge of Extinction to join Natalie, she obviously gives her one fire token to Rob. So that's basically it for the first 2 episodes. Holy crap. I really did wish I had time to do episode by episode review, because there is so much happening in every episode. So many dynamics being in play here. I am just like, I don't know really where to look or where to turn, and it's just nuts. So, really quickly before I end this video, I do want to talk about who I think are gonna do well in the season, who I think are not gonna do well, and who are probably like middle of the field. I don't know where they're gonna fall. They have both major pros and cons, so let's just talk about it. So I actually did a tier rank of who I think will do well this season, and me personally, I have Yul toward the top, Denise toward the top, Danny toward the top, and then kind of in the middle, and I actually would have had Kim a little bit higher, but because she was in trouble this past tribal, I put her a little bit lower. Her, Michelle, and Wendell, I think, are in the top. I think they are going to do very, very well. They each have their strengths. I don't think too many cons that are too obvious to other players, so I think that'll do well for them. And definitely toward the bottom, I have Rob, I have Sandra, I have Parvati, and I have Tony. I know Tony talked about wanting to play a different type of a game this time. Not too rushed, not too all over the place. He wants to play it more focused and wants to build more relationships with other people. If he can do that, then he'll definitely beat out my expectation of how he's going to perform this season. But I don't think anyone's really going to rely on him too much, because he is, who's to say that that old habits, they're not going to die, you know? He may resort to his old ways, and that could definitely hurt him. So that's why I still have him toward the bottom here. And Sarah, I think, also is a little bit toward the bottom as well. I remember watching preseason interviews, and a lot of people were saying that they wanted Sarah gone. That she was a person who could easily go back and forth between being good, being bad. Good cop, bad cop. She can do both. And that's definitely a little bit threatening to a lot of people. In the middle, I have Ethan, I have Adam, Ben, Jeremy, Tyson, Nick, and then Sophie. And then Sarah kind of toward the bottom of this list. They are players that I don't know what they're gonna be. They have their pros and they have their cons, and as of now, I don't know where the pro and con falls. Is it that Ethan, since he's been away from the game longer, is he going to be able to adapt to a new, faster-paced game? But he is a very likable guy, and I would assume he's still pretty fit, even though he had his battle with cancer. Jeremy's a very good strategist and also very strong, but he has been blindsided in the past, so could he be played again? Again, we don't know. Tyson, I think he's very physical, he's very charming, and he can be loyal, but he can be very devious. And then similar things like that with everyone in the middle ground. So, at this tier list that I made, this is kind of how I see the season going forward. Again, it's only 2 episodes in, and already I had a couple of shockers. I didn't expect Natalie to be gone this early. I did expect Amber, but I didn't expect Natalie to be gone this early. So, there's so many things to think about this season, but I cannot wait to see how this is going to unfold. I'm expecting a lot of big moves and unexpected moves, twists in the game. I am just so excited for Winners at War. I am so excited. I cannot wait to get to the second part of this where I talk about the season as a whole and who won the game. But until then, this is all I have for this video. So if you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. Leave comments down below. What do you think of the first 2 episodes of Winners at War? Who do you think is going to win? Who do you think is going to lose? Anything you want to talk about, leave those comments down below. I would love to read them. And if you want to see my future videos or videos I've already done, go ahead, hit subscribe, and hit the little bell icon so you can be notified when my videos come out. That's all I have for you guys today, and until the next video, bye! Mwah!